Hello everyone, happy holidays from Schwerpunkt. I hope this time of the year is going to be magic, serene, really happy for you, and all best possible things will come to you. I feel for this time of the year always, let's say it's always a moment of recollection, of reflection, in fact, of kind of spiritual regeneration. You know that we have come a long way at this point, this channel, and if you are following from some time, but even if you have given a look to the more recent content, you know that the more on properly spiritual dimension of our content has increased in a broader comprehensive interpretation of history, and this is going to go on, right? And today I will actually talk about how things have gone for the channel, for myself too, given that I'm running it, and so there are interesting things that I can tell you about it, and making some consideration overall on this. And for the rest, at the end of the video, I will give you some more, some proper wish of happy holidays. And I'm sure this year hasn't been particularly easy, right? We can argue that was the year before that was kind of the worst, right? If we take the pandemic generally as the the party ruiner, in a sense, for many ways, and also for the amount of that here, depending on naturally the various areas of the world, the seasonal changes and so on, and yet there is something in the last year that perhaps has been heavier than that, right? And it has touched, in fact, on that moral chord, right? In theory and in practice, frankly, the situation has improved, right? And hopefully, especially with the new variant here is taking over everything, but there would be actually an improvement of the situation. This seems to be going endemic, and factually we can't assume it's really going to end relatively soon. And of course, the you concretely, you may never fully can really foresee things, that these things happen all the time, and we more or less know at least what to expect in general, given that we studied also since the beginning, frankly, independently from the debate that occurred around these things that took mostly a political character. I must say that our science predicted quite accurately what would be happening. It's just, in fact, how to translate this in some measures that could cope with the situation really came on the fore, and there are many reasons I'm displeased. To me, it's over, right? I personally think that I shouldn't bother shouldn't worry anymore. At least, still being responsible, but within the limits of what is reasonable, and given the vaccination availability, this new this new trend that we are seeing, in fact, as a diminution and so on. Just the other day, I went out at dinner with a dear colleague, finally discussed after years, but we didn't really see each other, but because also we're kind of solitary, especially I am a solitary being. So it's pleasant, this time. Here it's the typically, a boreal winter day, and it's not particularly cold, but it's still that moment of the year, which, you see, yesterday was the solstice, right? And so the sun has started rising again. We don't quite see it in those first days. There is, in fact, a turning, and that's why it was chosen as a magic, sacred moment, as in, cultures in the past. And so we are descending again towards something else. And so I personally feel very much the seasonal cycles during the year. And I must say that what we're just leaving behind now is not being probably the best of times, indeed, right? Because morally speaking, we have been brought under, in a way, by the general situation, by the conflict that the situation has arisen, by the difficulties in general deriving from even mismanagement of the situation, of politics not really behaving, acting sensibly, or maybe acting in ways that are planned to deliver a certain idea, rather a certain mindset, rather than providing an actual solution. And that's something that I've seen before studying history, let's say, and we should never forget how easy it is to fall to the nefarious attitude of pretending that there is somebody out there that would solve life for you, right? You are primarily responsible for yourself, and before thinking to fix society, good thing would be fixing yourself and over again, so that you can actually be valuable for society and rising properly, vertically, to come eventually to be competent enough to take decisions that make sense, and not trying to spot some imaginary problem in the system that you don't actually have even the competence to even presume to think to be able to fix. And it's actually an easy time, right? There have been, especially things from an economical point of view, that haven't gone particularly well. In here, different mindsets, different attitudes, different propositions, let's say. But at the end of the day, this time of the year always reminds us that we are alone in a certain sense, right? I don't want to sound depressed. I think being lonely is not such a bad thing, right? It's an existential condition, because again, it doesn't matter how fortunately close we can be with people we love and so on, but at the end of the day, we are still always in charge of ourselves, and nobody can really fully feel or to think the way we do to let's say to exclude the reality of mankind, our mortality, our in fact limited time and options and possibilities, but also our potential. That is, we are truly the only ones we can find for ourselves. And so I'm sure that for many of you hasn't been particularly easy, and I'm hoping really that from this time onwards everything will go better, right? And we, that on Schwerpunkt we would never stress that happiness is the ultimate goal, but achievement, right? Fulfillment is the ultimate goal, and this obviously must take into consideration that life is suffering in a dimension that there is really not much we can do about that. Or better, we can always do a lot, but let's say we cannot come out, let's say, in a dimension where this is not, which this disappears, right? And so it's mostly how we cope with that that eventually makes the things done and can really make an objective, can improvement, right? For us and for the others. Because if we are not good for ourselves, we can't be good for others in the same time. And Schwerpunkt does fit in this broader picture for me in different ways, not because I'm pretending that I'm doing this particularly terrific good by making these videos and so on, but let's say in a disciplinary sense, right? In a sense of self-control and balance, etc. And that the last year I've hinted at it, my regular followers have probably realized at this point that this year's been not really the best one for me. And already last year was actually complaining that pretty serious things had actually happened, not to me, but to people I know and that I love, and then that I was very saddened by. But last year, at this time, I was actually feeling like a lion, because I was happy, because I had found something that I thought was, going to essentially make my life in the long-term perspective, and that I thought had come at the end of a path in my life. That for these years I would have reasons to celebrate the fact that I finally concluded my doctoral degree, that things went well, that after all I can't complain. I live in a really stable situation from many points of view, and I also know that this will probably not last forever, right? If anything, we, as I was saying before, people don't live forever, nor, you know, things are always going to be the same. So there is I have arrived to a point in my life in which I have to seriously take in consideration properly, even properly taking the reins of so many things that I've, you know, mostly relied on other people to do. And again, fortunately, I live in a very positive situation, but we all know that also material wealth is not really what makes happiness, given especially this time in history where we have we live literally with we have solved most of our problems, right? Solving world hunger, for example, was seen something, you know, almost utopistic up to a few generations ago. Today we're pretty close to that, and we've never lived a better time historically from a strictly material point of view, and quality of life indicated also in general. But there is something else that is intertwined with that, is properly the sense of purpose of having a name. And you know that with Shroud Punk, especially many of you that have subscribed this year, many of you, really a lot of people, do not know that I made this, and I haven't finished quite yet, the von Krieger series, so the entire reading and commentary of von Clausewitz's On War. That, I must say, has changed my life forever. Let's say I've grown up with Schwerpunkt and with the other things I've done in my life recently. It's been all one, right? So what happened last year, you know, and it was loaded with this sense of responsibility and of, you know, necessity of action and positive, you know, and initiative. And so, as it turns out, I'm also very high in conscientiousness. This was very appealing to me because I'm very meticulous and I get to the point. People generally know me, right? I have my idea of myself, which is not like I like myself, but I don't flatter myself. Other people always, you know, if they have to describe me, usually say, you know, that I'm squared, that I'm rational, cold. You probably know that it's not. First of all, I disagree, even properly from a philosophical point of view, that we are not. Maybe I'm more than others. This is maybe the point. But yet, I have problems with that, and a great part of this regulation derives exactly from the awareness that things have, you know, do not quite exist just by chance, or as a default condition that you have to work on to make them work. And so last year I thought, as I had been blessed by, you know, this meeting, you know, essentially I had found and even proposed at some point, you know, with, you know, a woman who eventually I lost later on. And so I thought I had come to the arrival point, in a way. It's this kind of end of history illusion, right? That you feel that, after all, now you set this trend and it will go, right? As I often repeated also in my videos, things are never like that. You can't really predict what happens. And in fact, there were reasons there that were kind of understandable why the thing ended. But I was wired. I had committed myself totally, and I had already actually began to feel bad, because you know that at the beginning, what makes you fall in love is the same thing that makes you eventually destroyed later, or almost anxious or paranoid if things go wrong. And so in March, this thing arrived. I've had severe issues. At this point, I can't say from a psychological point of view. It's funny. There's some of you asked me a couple of times whether I was, you know, I was feeling well because of my. We'll talk about this now. My re-uploading rate. You know, he asked whether I was on the verge of nervous breakdown, and actually not. Right? What is alarming, maybe, and I understand that, is that I'm uploading all this stuff, and you would say that yes, it does have a toll, undoubtedly, but it also keeps me stable and balanced, and no, I'm not on the verge of nervous breakdown. But on the contrary, this thing keeps me going on, has kept me going on. And we'll talk about that later, but because moral forces are the most important thing. But I've experienced something in my life. I had been heartbroken once, and I was very young, let's say. And this happened 10 years later now. So this thing was meaningful for so many reasons that unfortunately had to do also with the fact that this person was very much connected to medieval warfare. She was an archaeologist, specialized in arms and armor, and more than that, because she did certain things at a professional level in the field of actually of I don't know if to call it. I want to be too specific, but martial arts and international. And she was bright, and that connected us quite much. So when I got heartbroken, all this thing has completely destroyed me. And but I've always been here anyway. So I guess that I wasn't totally destroyed either. But I can assure you that from a psychological but also physical point of view, I've been exhausted. I've had a very heavy breakdown. Right, I remember since February last year, for some reasons that are not important now, and began to have literal cyclotemic swings, but brutal ones. That like for half of the day, I would feel my body aching, and this thing was exhausting. And eventually, the breakup and heartbreak arrived, and this thing was it was. I stayed for hours, sometimes exhausted after these rushes, staring at the ceiling on my bed, doing literally nothing. Right? Fortunately, I had already finished my PhD thesis. So, but after that, I even had by momentum some force to continue on. I finally, when I finished, the first thing I began to do was reading stuff I couldn't do in years. I even began to write an article, but since June I basically couldn't make it because these rushes continued, and they began to wear me out. So I actually spent. It felt better towards August, September, October. In the first half of November, I had a major episode, an anxiety one that lasted, in fact, 2 weeks. And I found myself at the night on the bathroom floor with the back on the against the top, panting hard, praying that anxiety would pass. I personally never experienced anything like this in my life before. I remember, yes, there were some, the first heartbreak was very painful, but this thing was different because it was wired with role playing, and the worst is that it doesn't matter how rapid that how it lasted a few months, right? It was the connection, but the emotion was so intense that basically I realized that with my mind, I remained at 1 year ago, even though I acknowledge fully and rationally that reality has gone on, but with my mind I still feel there. It's a very weird sensation, and it's not even because I live on the fantasy, right? I've lost basically any hope, and so I'm not really even torturing, but I have probably some kind of adrenalinic, I've had it at least, some adrenalinic addiction. And what happened to this point in the last years is that I've also, with the pandemic, and the research, etc., I took a strange habit. Essentially, I work at night, right? I wake up in the afternoon, and basically I go to sleep in the morning. Especially during the dark season, I basically never see sunlight. It's just like a vampire. And so it's as if this was all a long night, right? I confess it, I like to spoil myself. I'm actually, I like home, I like comfort, I like tranquility, I like serenity, and for many reasons, I say it even cynically, ever since the pandemic started, especially the first year where there were lockdowns, etc., I finally could relax, right? And I remained even there, right? Even before that relationship started. So I remember still talking with my colleagues about the last year of the research, right? I don't know, talking on the sofa, in winter, kind of aristocratic fashion, and having this relaxation and seeing the world kind of going crazy, but still, remaining relevant. That I also had my losses due to COVID, and but paradoxically, that was the last of my concerns. I had other people having serious problems, in spite of that, and we had this pressure of the last year because we didn't know whether we had the extension of the scholarship or not. There are other colleagues that still have to finish that are really in deep trouble because they had to visit archives that remain closed for a long time. It's a mess, right? So I was lucky, actually, because I got all the digitalized, because I worked mostly bibliographically, not in the archive, so I got all digitalized, and then I had even the extension and the scholarship. So that's where also that thing happened. So I thought, this is heaven. I will settle down. I finally got it. I took it as a reward. It's a sort of religious thing. That's quite interesting because it's exactly what had happened to me when I was an adolescent. That at that age, we know, so psychologically, people do reason religiously, independently from whether they are religious or not. But I mean that there is this very much sense of the best person that you can be, and having, first of all, the acknowledgement and the strength you can make it. And I had lost hope for 10 years because I couldn't find I had, as you know, 2 other girls, but I didn't quite love them, and I had lost my hope that I even could feel again like that again. I don't know if you probably if you have watched, many of you have watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, when the Dracula's brides complain with Dracula. They said, you don't know what love is, right? You're bad, and he says, once I shall love again, right? Me. And so, living in the night, in the darkness, I don't even kid. I mean, I had taken that kind of negative, I don't know, not even Dionysian, because I kind of resumed my Apollonian in my, even thanks to From Closets to Ideas. I was always kind of more inclined towards the Apollonian side. But it's never also without the other element. So this thing has completely demotivated me. Right, I stopped writing. I had the force actually to review my thesis once, but I didn't have the strength to find anybody to contact anybody. First of all, to write the index, that is an atrociously complicated thing. Of the names, I mean, and anybody for publishing, and so times goes by, and other publications came out. So it's like I simply said, I can't make it. I'm tired. I feel tired. I feel tired physically. Right? The thing that here has really destroyed, it's not that mentally I'm losing it. It's that physically I don't make it. With anxiety, very often I'm sleep deprived. Even though I actually have enough time to sleep well in spite of this weird daily cycle. And I feel pain. In my eyes. I feel pain. With these attacks also affect my guts, literally. There is something really bad, and I've always been a healthy person, so again, I'm not used to this. And I've been talked to to the person deputed to this profession. I was told that, especially because of my high conscientiousness, this kind of reaction is somewhat normal. And it does have the symptomatology of post-traumatic stress, which is another thing that was very strange to me, because I never lead like, or at least maybe, you see, everybody now has some sort of pathology, also mental. I don't believe in that. I frankly believe that, first of all, I'm not depressed. This is an anxiety disorder. And secondly, that doesn't matter how much, things can go wrong. Maybe because I'm that conscientious, I realize it's my fault. Let's leave aside the fact that the whole story, and I will not digress on what happened in that relationship, but I feel very responsible for making it gone wrong. And even if it hadn't been my fault, or maybe it was not my fault, it was both fault in a sense, always. But if I have to live up to my principles, it's still my fault. It doesn't matter whether she did anything wrong in that sense. It's also how do you cope with that and how do you fix the problem, because that's really what measures your worth, right? And I was properly destroyed in my worth, in my sense of self-worth, which was really hard. And you know that I'm not particularly humble. I have my honestly, I've always had a high opinion of myself, even though I don't like saying it. But I've never been like, I never despised myself. I never felt that there is some psychological twist here that I know it's fine. I know rationally that I'm doing the right thing, that I have support, that I'm strong, that I'm fighting this, that I'm going through it the way it's supposed to, because it's supposed to hurt, right? I guess I was saying in the beginning, I'm supposed to feel like this, but I will pass it hopefully at some point. And it doesn't matter whether this has changed my life forever, as the previous experiences have changed my life forever. This one was really heavy, and after 1 year, it's as if it was yesterday, and that's how intense the emotion was for making myself still think like this. And that's also dangerous. I've been struggling not to become paranoid, but there were some. I'm not paranoid by inclination, but let's say there are some ways you cope with the anxiety that make you essentially build up like a, okay, everything's fine now, don't worry. And then certain things happen and destroy even your this vision. So that those are kind of heavy blows, and so that's why I had that episode in November, for that matter. And I don't even know how to tell more about this, because it's relevant to the channel because I began to do other things than before. I mean, it's always the same content, the same typology, but it has changed, and it has brought me on the forward, if you want, with my thinking. This year, I actually expanded my Indo-Europeistic interests, and something will come pretty soon here. And I have matured a much, I think, neuropsychologically concrete explanation of most of what I learned historically and religiously and militarily, and that does make sense. And man, it's powerful. And I'm about to talk about this here, and it does derive exactly from this pressure that I received. I wish I had lived the thing differently, but paradoxically, this break, this pain, has pushed me forward in those acquisitions. And actually, I leave, in fact, what happened to me as a punishment for not having, being not having understood certain things before either, right? It's incredible how deeply this experience affected the way I thought about warfare before and now. And because, yes, of all the single elements of this story, right, you should just know this, that I've even contacted somebody to participate to some Butthurt encounters that I cannot participate to because I simply don't have the time to train. But I got myself informed I wouldn't have any problem to buy an armor, because all that was revolving around the meaning that I was giving to say, how far do you want to push this? How much do you want to prove to yourself? Or do you want just remaining sitting here without doing anything? I thought about this in April. I thought about this again now for other reasons. And yet, I don't think I'll do it. On the contrary, from this year I will start assistantship. I don't do it because I'm particularly anxious to go out there again. But it turns out it's something more manageable than I thought it was. I will keep making videos anyhow. Maybe if one day I won't have time to prepare one, we can go, as we should, go back on von Clausewitz. I know that makes less views and people don't watch it because they don't understand it at large. But that's the best content, that the content that gives more form and substance properly to this view of life that, again, must be reinforced. And there is more, right? Even when we finish on war, can pass in the art of attack. I mean, I even thought at some point to introduce some, I don't know, history of philosophy it is, but I said no, that's not my thing. I'm something else. I'm specializing in the art of war, and if I want this to have been all worth it, I have to firmly continue in this, and I have to cultivate both this activity and other private ones that come along, but those are not particularly important now. I've been offered some jobs, but what I want to be is I want to be assistant there, and also because it's terribly promising, given the convenience of this all. I mean, I live just next door to there. It's a big place where to learn and teach it in Europe, but even in the world, telling the truth. And I've had the right professor that has come about, and they need assistance, and they already know me fundamentally, so they just it's obvious that I have to go there, right? And I hope that will wake me up a little bit. I'm not very much outgoing, and I don't like people in general. I can't even let's say reject too many students during the examination, but it's about creating a bond with the professors, with that system, and it's important for me. So I have to make this step. I have to try to forget what happened to me. At least I have to distract myself. It does work, right? When you keep yourself busy, right? But you must have also the motivation to keep yourself busy. So that's really the real challenge. And I know I can make it, right? I've already been through a similar thing, and this one was worse indeed, because that's not the point where you're young and you're in love with the idea of love. This is really for having a family. So that destroys you when you realize that you could do it, and for how difficult it is in any to find the right person. So believe me, I've been thinking a lot about this, and then there is so much I could do. But my greatest thing was, if you really want to prove something, if you really want to live up your expectations, you just go there to her and show her, even if she's going to reject it, but at least do it for her. Prove that you can take a plane and simply going to say something there, and it's some, but that would trigger the person. That would be kind of stalking. I thought, I concluded, maybe I will do some kind of, I don't know, try to talk with some of her friends or something, but I don't think it even makes sense. I mean, if the person doesn't want, and this is seen as a pressure, I can't be just a warrior. I have to be also a leader in a sense, and I have to understand where it's right to stop, where it's more convenient to show firmness and coldness, and that's probably the most important thing after all, because the reason why this was so intertwined with what happened to me is that it's as if I had lost discipline, right? I was overwhelmed by this chronic anxiety, and I couldn't be the normally firm and steady person that I am, even in relationships, dealing with people. I calm anxious people. It turned out I'm anxious now, so it was that bad, because it was all one, as you understood, with the military thing, with the Middle Ages, with motivation, with love, with the future, with all these things. And so that's what I couldn't stand at this all. How ironically cruel this thing actually turned to be. And if anything has to happen, literally anything, yes, we have to make it ourselves, but we also have to be able to risk even even what seems to go in the other direction if what we have tried so far hasn't worked, right? So it's not reverse psychology. He's properly wondering whether your own capacity is what can change fate. And this entails so many moral considerations about the world, the actors involved, that it's unspeakable, and I can't even properly digress on what I mean, because it would be too personal. So let's leave it here. So speaking of the channel, this, many haven't properly understood this yet, but you can easily see that I'm re-uploading older videos. And at this point, every once in a while, somebody still asks, but why are we uploading, or why is video still blurred, etc., of the old ones? It's because, if you go back on what it was, mid-August, something, you can find the video in which I explained this and so on. And this was a copyright thing, right? It was the fact that for years I had been using copyright images, even though blurred and so on, and I hadn't still monetized the channel, and so I had gone on with this bad habit, essentially, of picking stuff from the internet, blurring it, and using it as a background. That in my videos, this, pictures probably are not even the most important thing. It's mostly for clickbaiting, in a decent sense, because I always pick a picture that is pertinent, unlike most other kind of meme cartoon-like thumbnails that you can see around for historical stuff. And for people that do not have an idea that of what the channel is actually about, and what I explain and how and why. So I am still not particularly open to podcasting, because it turns out that it's something you're a bit more dependent on an external actor than even what YouTube is, right? And I have arrived to a point where actually making a headway is not going to be a big problem, probably, because we are arrived to, it's a bit of a channel update video as well today, because I have stopped making many, let's say, following much of the previous routine, let's say, that I followed, the cycle of videos, etc. Now we're making mostly new manualistic stuff. That is necessary, because about certain topics, very important ones that we've covered in the last weeks, we had never really talked, ever. So this was actually very positive in many ways, but we arrived essentially to more than 1,400 subscribers, so I want to thank you for that too. But explaining you a bit the dynamic that has formed, essentially by mid-August, so it was I hadn't yet monetized, and I hadn't fixed this copyright issue. So but by mid-August, I was getting something like 200 subscribers a month, and rising, right? So the thing was beginning to become really consistent in a way, in spite of all the videos that I made, for which, of course, the result was relatively poor. But the reason why this was happening is that I made so many videos that the algorithmic sum of all the likes, the watch length, the views, and so on had started to encircle my own videos. And it turns out that people say, but you make videos that people generally speaking do not watch because they are too long, or too complex. Let's be honest. I mean, they deal with things that most people do not really even properly go on YouTube to listen to, and they're also very specific in a way. In my opinion, what I do is terribly generalistic in nature. Like, if people think that what I talk about on YouTube is something very specific, but properly they don't have much of a historical awareness of what it's done academically about these topics, I'm surprised. Sometimes I'm surprised. I mean, I shouldn't be, because I've always known that, and that's what I invested in mostly. The fact that most of the things I would discuss here, people do not really even know, right? I began even to be fed up by it, though, because I know that there is a silent majority that probably knows what I'm talking about. In general, just even if they don't know specifically the details, the information, still they understand the importance of the historical subject. And yet it does seem to me that an incredible amount of people have been able to follow my channel for years, even without quite even understanding what I'm talking about, or why these things are important. What is there that really, is worth to know. I see this banal even just through the views that I get at every video. I mean, there are certain videos, but there are obvious reasons for which, let's say, some videos are watched more or less than others, and these reasons are not flattering at all. Not for me, but for who watches on average, because there's probably a level of superficiality that it's obvious, right, that you encounter everywhere. So I know that my audience is actually better than the average, because on YouTube normally you see people really being wild sometimes, and instead I've gathered an important amount of decent, at least behaviorally, subscribers, and you do behave well, right? But again, there's lots of you that properly that are here because they still think that the content I make are somewhat abstracted from the context of the channel, and therefore presume that, okay, let's watch this video just because it talks about this or that country, and then properly not understanding what's the whole deal with that. I don't have haters. I don't have any, but there is some complaint every once in a while. There are some people that feel entitled to say that, but there is also an effective, let's say, control of certain behaviors, because YouTube allows to control them in a sense. Basically, all the comments are filtered, and most of the times I don't allow them, not because they are critical at all, but because they say things that are impertinent to the topic. That's the thing that feds me out, because I don't care about, they can even have a criticism, and I usually publish them, but the question is, when you comment on things that they're like mostly jokes that do not even enter in the quid of the video, like, why do you make them, right? They're not even good ones, but it's not even about jokes. It's properly about stopping, like, maybe I say something in the video that the question doesn't even take, that the question is completely neglecting, as if, before listen to the video and then write something. I know that there is a need of, socialization, something that is disdainful, frankly, but and there is a sense of community here. I understand it, but at the same time, take my videos for what they're telling you by poking you, not because you presume that you've already assumed what I'm saying, because that's, if I eventually say something completely different when you listen to it, what's been the purpose, especially for who's supposed eventually to read those comments. Like, the reason why I actually make this selection is that people will come to watch the video, if they all find comments that they're not pertaining to the content, they're going to assume that I'm actually talking about that, while I'm talking about something completely different. So since I care very much about the general, in fact, moral influence and dimension of this whole thing, I do try to remain pretty stern and even cold about this comment, because I don't, it's not to be given for granted that comments here are just, it's even against the algorithm, right? If I don't allow comment, it's basically the person can see that they that as if they had inserted it, but factually the reason that they still have to be admitted. So they aren't the only ones who can see it, including me, but the others can't. And if I don't approve them, after 1 month, they're gone. And sometimes I just can't even check all the comments. At this point, I don't have much traffic, but let's say I can still do it. But there will be a point where, that thing will be unmanageable. Hopefully, at least for the channel size. I mean, but in any case, no. But for the rest, I'm even being too picky now, because objectively I don't get even many of those comments, because I don't get many comments in general, right? And we're going, as I was saying before, to actually advance a lot, but I mean really a lot, in certain theoretical acquisitions. Not much about the theory of the art of war, which we will probably resume consistently at some point, hopefully next year, after some months though. But I will try my best to start talking about certain topics, especially in history of religions, Indo-European interpretation of history and something, and all an important reflection on how idealism has been fundamentally stripped off, like it's kind of properly taken out of the picture in Western civilization after World War II, unjustifiably, right? Because certain ideologies were, mainly Nazi fascism, were idealists. Still, we had the Soviets for a long time that surely weren't like that, and so all the Marxism that we have seen in our democracies, etc., and it's materialism, without any kind of idealism, that would have been just accused as some sort of internationalism, wrongly from an intellectual point of view, independently from the use that was done by somebody before. Has completely ruined, in my opinion, the moral dimension of the West. A great part of the decline of it stems from this. And fortunately, we're kind of recovering this, but in a way you wouldn't like to, meaning that we're recovering idealism not much because of the intellectual recovery of that material, or even people knowing that the material even existed. We're arriving to a point of what seemed to be obvious, let's say, for an averagely educated person up to a generation ago, or not even. Now it's completely forgotten about what is going to come next, right? We're going to be to arrive at a paradoxical moment in history where you have all this historiography that has already been written. It's a serious one, by the way, one that has suffered also this terrifying bias, but that is being forgotten entirely. And somebody will have to look back at it. That is, there will be this sort of look at backism. That up to this point, given that historiography became something really decent from a scientific point of view, from 2, maybe 300 years to be generous, it could be covered, right? But given also the booming of by a single person, by the booming of the publications now, it's going to become really difficult, because a single person can barely do something like that. I think I'm lucky when I think that I studied military history, because it's been so poorly studied so far that it's easier to cover historiographically certain topics, because it's less books to read, even though there are really a lot already. So you can imagine what all the other subjects are. This is really a problem, because we are lacking ever more the unitary synthesis that we need to command the world. And I don't know how I got here, but what I was referring to, however, is that there was a great momentum at the beginning of this year, right? We passed from something like 200. 1 year ago, we were kind of 2,800 subscribers, right? Now we are 4,800, and if I hadn't made that, let's say, blurring out the videos and re-uploading, I now explain why, would have gone at this point already towards the 6,000. Instead, we are 4,800. It's okay. What did happen concretely? Because some of you may say, but is Schwerpunkt still rising so slowly? Why is that the case? Because the momentum was being gained for the channel to expand really seriously, right? So all the people who said, but these videos are not watched, it turned out it's not true, because when I read in the analytics, the rate of engagement and the average watch length, my videos are very long, but so it would obviously be superior to YouTube's average, but there is also, even in terms of subscription rate, it's much higher than YouTube average. So actually the truth is that people that are exposed to my content are willing to subscribe, right, are willing to watch, are willing to keep this alive. What happened in mid-August is that not only I basically blurred all the videos that I had made with copyright pictures and left them there for access, but gradually, re-uploading essentially the same copy of them, also with improved audio, because the first videos were also, they had issues in that sense. It was too low a bit, the volume, but with new pictures. Then I must avow, right, and this, I accept the Calvary here that I am put myself in, because I'm re-uploading 800 videos, right, for which I all had to find the right picture. So this thing has started in August. There are mostly 800 videos. I have surpassed now consistently the 300. Maybe we are at 340, 350, possibly even more already. So I think we will finish by, in a few months we will have covered most of it, right? So it's not going to be a big deal. But what happened concretely is that, and I eliminated the old ones, right? So they are the same videos. So nothing is being lost, except perhaps for around 30 videos that had copyright issues that I couldn't really solve very, very easily, and I prefer to obscure. Then probably I will remake in a way or another. It's not a problem. But over 800, and considering that now there are more than 1,200 videos, because there are other content there that I made without copyrighted images, we still are at good point. What actually, and also monetized by mid-August. So that maybe added a little bit to the, until this was without advertisements, was kind of more followable, watchable, but listenable, because I presume that most of you just listen to it. But with the advertisement, maybe something else went down. I inserted advertisements not because I was hungry for money or anything. It's just that YouTube began to insert advertisements without my which they can do, of course, but without my permission, because when the channels start making more views, they basically insert some ads here and there, even if you don't allow. So I decided at that point to monetize, and I'm fine with that. At the beginning of Shroud Punk, I said no, I will never monetize because I want for people to be free. I think it's more important from a moral point of view. At this point, I realized that actually it's okay, right? There can be on the YouTube itself says, when you surpass the threshold of 1,000 subscribers, don't monetize immediately, because that may be, arrived at surpassing 4,000. So okay, well, let's do it anyway, because at this point, the way the videos are going to spread and they are continuing to, and that was the interesting thing, will happen anyway. It's just a matter of time, and not pretty long one. Also because I'm keeping to make videos. So what did actually happen? Why aren't we at 6,000 subscribers already, and going towards, maybe double next year or even more? Because it was expanding, it was accelerating its expansion. And what is interesting on these videos that are so, they are infiltrating everywhere, because there are so many that people are exposed to them. So we managed to bypass the problem of somebody finding them, because you see, on YouTube, the content now is monopolized all by the bigger producers, right? These channels that have teams that make astonishing graphic content, maybe much shorter one than mine, but still, let's say, if you want to search for a battle, that's automatically the first. They all copy each other. At some point they did copy me too, actually, because I was the only one to do certain thing, and surprise, at some point they should have covered certain topics, but they happen in proximity to my experience. I want to flatter myself too much, but it's actually going on. It's because I cover things really in detail and almost encyclopedically when I follow, especially the routine of it. But some content is really unique, so they can't really predict it or see what I'm going to do. In any case, the problem is the algorithm. So what did I do? When I obscured all the videos at the beginning, at least the copyrighted ones, let's say 800 out of 1,100, 1,200, as they increased eventually, all the likes and watch length and views and so on were taken out, right? And those are the things that the algorithm works for in order to publicize the video content. So what did happen technically? That first of all, in order, I said, the most successful videos, say what order did I follow to re-upload the videos? The chronological one, a random one by topic, let's say, or I don't know, some other. I chose actually the number of views. That is, I said, the videos that made more views are more likely to be the ones that the earlier I re-upload, the sooner are going to reacquire views, and therefore to boost the channel forward, right, with the algorithmic mechanism that basically makes you, your content promoted by the same algorithm for others to come across your content. In fact, by YouTube itself. For some of these, there was no reason, because they were in part some of the older ones that had accumulated naturally over time more views. And also because some of them, in fact, at the very beginning were with non-copyrighted images. So actually the videos that made more views are still out there, and they're increasing, they're leading, that I told it many times on video updates, on channel updates videos, that of all the videos I made, just were like a handful that really worked as a locomotive of the whole thing, and it keeps doing that. But there was also this big amount of other videos that individually maybe they weren't making so many views, like 1 a day, 2 a day, and so on, and increasing a bit, however, as you understand, as these views accumulate. But that still made an important amount of views. When I started re-uploading en masse, so canceling the old ones that accumulated all those views, made the channel losing that algorithmic base, right? So I basically fell. I have the stats here. Let me check. This year, last 365 days. And so here I have it. You see, the peak I reached was in fact in August. Actually, even in September, because even when I was re-uploading them, still I made a lot of algorithmic views. And then I think the top was 1,100 views in a day, but the average would be something around 800, right? So to something that fell pretty low towards November, fundamentally, to something like maybe an average of 550 a day. So it was not a complete collapse, as you understand. It was something, but let's say, looking at the entire length from 2018-19, it's as if we came back at the levels of March 2020. And fortunately now, I don't know whether accomplished the cold season in the northern hemisphere, where I have most viewers and so on. The fall has stopped. So I'm traveling, I'm faring mostly at, in fact, 550. It's remained there, and I realized that also, let me check the watch length. The watch length also has dropped, but probably not so much. And so who's actually watching? The subscribers. There are not many. I mean, the subscribers that actually watch the channel, because many of you also subscribe to my channel, but you have subscription to hundreds of other channels, so it's not a big deal. But let's say, so if you look, the watch length, it is actually the most important thing. It's not been such a dramatic. It's been an important fall, but it structurally has remained consistent, so much in fact that even though the subscribers dropped similarly, they actually kept increasing. Right, and they keep increasing even when I get a very few views. That is to say, when I still had those few views back in the day, I got actually much less subscribers than now. And it's kind of obvious, because now I have more videos around. Many people actually come across my content because they search for the keywords that they find in my videos. So independently from the algorithmic mass views that now has dropped because of that mechanism I told you before, which is not it doesn't depend on you. It does depend on the algorithm, right? Has kept people attracted to the channel, and subscribers follow, and so the traffic is kept alive. I've also created lots of other playlists, which is another great strategy to actually increase the, because it customizes the whatever you want to read. You understand that for 1200 videos you can make lots of different playlists about different topics, so it's fine, right? And I must say that I'm, especially in these days now, I want to make a video for a couple of days because it's Christmas and so on, but I will add some new playlists and see whether the thing. And I realized that the more views are reinjected in the system, and proportionally compared to before, the more subscribers I get. So this is very interesting because it means that a channel is a small one, right? It's not even 5,000, but it's going to rise quickly to it in a way. And so when the algorithmic views will mount up again, this thing will expand pretty much. So is there something we can do to accelerate this? Well, of course, at the end of every video I always tell you share or like and so on and so on. By the way, YouTube, I don't know if you noticed that it's not my fault, you've seen it in every video at that point, has taken away dislikes. Better, if you can still dislike the video and I can see whether you dislike it or not, but the only visible one is the likes out there. So, I mean, there are pros and cons to this. It's, from one side it limits the, let's say, it's a different philosophy. It mostly, at this point, rewards the relevance of the video rather than the moral implications of it. So it's not a very good thing. It was good when there were likes and dislikes, and they were an important pressure put also on the creators, because if people dislike so much your content, you have to fix it somehow. However, likes or dislikes as well are really important because they count very much in the algorithm. So what I actually ask you, if you have any interest, of course, to see this channel grow consistently, is first of all to share. Like, sharing, I can assure you, is really a big weapon that we have, because it's not much about getting lots of views immediately, but it's essentially exposing people to the awareness that I exist. And as I was saying before, it turns out through the analytics that as long as people are exposed to my content, they tend to be sucked in quickly, that YouTube's average. So that's a very important field in which to invest. My advice, if you want, I know that sharing is kind of, I never do it. Like, nobody, especially that asks me to do it. I do it. Nobody asks me, Frank. But I hate this kind of self-promotion. But it's important for the channel as a system, because I see it statistically from the within, and I am aware of the potential, and I like to tell you this magic that stands behind the stats and all these things. So sharing is big thing in the first place, and also with some, I don't know, talk to people. I don't know if you have friends that follow whatever. If have you ever listened to Shroud Punk? Like, if you're interested in the art of war, if you have this kind of almost encyclopedical, map of the Middle Ages that is not just filmsy, cartoonish, like it's meme-based. It's an actual analysis. Even if the guy doesn't speak that well and it's long and it's boring, there's not much of graphic stuff, but it still gets to some interesting points, which I assume that would the reason that you follow me for some. At least assuming from the comments, of course. And I'm not saying I'm a successful channel or content creator. It's obvious, right? But that is a big, important thing. The second thing that you can do, which is kind of cunning, but it does still work. Like, if you go out, right, and you leave your PC on or whatever, maybe turn the audio down so you don't consume electric current. But let's say, click on one of the playlists or a videos, loop a video, and just keep it going for hours, because that's the visualization length that really increases dramatically the algorithmic weight of the video. So that it's a very good way for promoting. Likes, dislikes, it's the same. They count the same. So dislike my videos as much as you can. That's very important. And And in general, yeah, also views are important, but it's all together that really works. So obviously the best thing is, not to trick it, but just to invite more people that are interested to follow my content. That's the thing. That will happen gradually, but again, the way this happens automatically is greatly influenced by such dynamics. So those are really useful, and I don't like. Some of you, I accepted donations at this point. At this point, my PayPal is down because I have to reactivate my ID, and so you can't even make me a gift for Christmas. It's not a problem. I don't search for the money, but be aware that the greatest thing you can do for me as a gift is to share these things I listed to you. That's the single most important thing. For the rest, I don't care. I don't care about the money. Don't worry about that. Even if I monetize the channel, it's not. I mean, of course, incidentally, that brings money. It's not that much, right? That I made here, but still, it's significant. It's not. It's not irrelevant. And so, my point. I'll tell you from my perspective. Let's say I now start this assistantship and I keep working at my articles. Hope to resume, my motivation and so on, because I already started bit by bit to do it. But I like the idea of coming back home every day and making a Schwerpunkt video so that this thing never dies, right? And keeps expanding. And I will keep doing it. I will take care for it. I will improve the channel. I will do important things. And I will also start talking about lots of new, not new, but, new content, of course, is never going to end. The last of my problems is not finding the content, but whether I will leave long enough to cover it all. So I will always coming up with different original stuff at every single time, right? So this is crucial, really crucial, and important for the channel. The single most important thing. If you care about the channel, then of course, if you don't, but I'm presumably talking to somebody that mostly cares for listening to this particular video with all my complaints and lamentations of sentimental affairs and so on. But I can assure that it's been a rough ride for me this year. I wasn't, psychologically even. You see, this fact of the re-uploads, it's gonna take forever. I calculated it will end by August, September if I keep this rhythm. I know it's gonna be annoying, right? If you don't want to listen to bad videos or there is no date on the video on the re-upload videos, but let's say at the beginning I didn't speak so fluently like I do now, and I know I'm still difficult to follow in many ways. But if you see a re-upload, just know that it's a video that's always previous to last August, let's say. So there is stuff even from almost 3 years ago that's when I couldn't even speak decently, at least for a YouTube recording. So every day instead I make a new video. So it's at this point, at the beginning, in the first month, I re-uploaded even 5-6 videos a day, right? Plus the new one. At this point, I settled, because it was exhausting, to 1 new video and 2 re-uploads. So if I make 3 uploads a day, and so just one, as you know. And I know that you know it, because I see that you watch mostly the new one when there is no re-upload written on it. Then gradually, I'm canceling all the re-upload in brackets after a couple of weeks that I uploaded them, or sometimes even sooner. But just so that for when I upload the content, what's the new one and what's the old one. And still I see that you actually watch very, very gladly and even like videos that are very old, and that for these reasons, I'm even surprised that you may like, right? Sometimes there were some videos that were terrible, like the way I presented making for like 30 seconds in a row. And yet you like those, and you watch it, because I see it from the stats that you do watch. So I'm surprised by that, and it's okay. It's really okay. All of those videos in interest of, as we've seen, of importance, are fundamentally what probably is going to be rewatched by somebody at some point. So some of the older videos especially really had a better upstart, let's say, for at this point where I have 48,000 subscribers, that 48,000 subscriber, really no, 4,800 subscribers that still mostly watch this thing since the beginning. So at the time maybe I got less views, and so these things should also restart quite quickly. But yet it's very important, because in the meanwhile there are new videos on YouTube that have somewhat surpassed my content. So I can even make let's say I can re-upload a video that was very successful because I made it 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Now it will struggle more to rise up, because in the meanwhile other videos have been made, and so I lost the priming, right? So playlists are really important too. A lot of people who come to, I see from stats here, are hardly aware, first of all, of my previous content, of the Filmkrieg that I'm very, legitimately satisfied by, say, but especially of the fact that there are playlists, or even, that they made lots of videos that you can create. At this point, playlists are really numerous, really many, right? And so it's probably becoming difficult to search for them within, and probably most people don't really search for those things. I don't know how the advice videos chain works, and probably there is. I don't watch my own videos, so I don't. I wouldn't know. But the in general, just know that there's plenty of other content that is, if you like what I do normally, historically, just know that I've made lots of stuff, but I mean lots, thousands, right, at this point, of the same thing back in the day, and you can all access it there without any problem. So that is important to know as well, because again, it's one of that. You see, what I said also before relatively to the subscribers' laziness sometimes is that I realize that you watch something else. So I'm not jealous, and I understand that. It's obvious. But let's say, since I get very enthusiastic comments, my question is, if you like a video like this, not this, somebody some that you like particularly, sometimes I say that I think within myself, this is not even such a big deal of a video, right? I made much better ones, but are you aware that they exist? That's quite important to know. There could be other criticism here and there. I address the problems that I have with, again, the type of bias that that exists in my audience. I realize what your interests, what are your preferences, what's your favorite topic, and so on. And I know why you think that. And again, sometimes it's not even a positive thing, because I think it conceals something sometimes that, again, it's not. You see, I personally think I say relatively interesting things, but also pretty simple ones after all. So not banal, but still general in nature. And when I arrive to the point where I see that not even the essentials sometimes of history, or medieval history mostly, as we do, or other things that I already said, for example, are not gotten, that still maybe there is some. It's not because the video is not understood, it's because it's not watched, it's not listened, it's not, people do not focus on it, do not really. It's not that they should make an effort because I explain myself poorly. It's because literally it takes to listen to the whole thing, right? It's like when you go to university. It's funny when people hear sometimes, right, every once in a while, not frequently, that videos should be like 50 minutes long. Why? Like I make videos of 2 hours long on a topic, and you are complaining because they should be short. It's against any kind of scientific educational moral logic that I've ever heard. Like if you are like, but this is YouTube, and who cares? Like, because YouTube is to be watched just by the way it's standardly watched, right? If you go to university and you attend a class of an hour and a half, it's mostly what my average videos are, at least the consistent ones. You say, what do you say to the professor? No, I prefer a lesson of 15 minutes. It's idiotic. right? It's idiotic for yourself because, the professor can also be happy of seeing you going away after 15 minutes because he has less, people to manage. But the problem is that if you're here to learn anything, what's your point of asking for smaller videos? I mean, it's kind of dumb, right? Especially considering that I make a new video every day, so that if I, it would be even convenient in a sense for me to make shorter videos. I could even make multiple ones. But the point is that the quality of these videos lays exactly in the broader criticism, the broader it's in the comprehensive synthesis that I make of important issues, like big ones, like recently we talked about some major countries in Europe. I mean, those are things that if you really want to go in detail and being competent minimally, you should listen at least to 20 videos like this, or even more, right? Because that's what we normally have to study at, when we make a research and to be presentable just for, to a conference or anything. So it's very surprising to me. I mean, from my perspective, it really properly gives the dimension of how much people, especially young people, are completely dishabituated to any kind of effort, especially a mental one, of applicational one, of kind of, making an effort to listen, to understand, to focus, to reflect, right? And so actually, I must say that many of you instead are good listeners. I was about to say students, but I never saw you as students ever, because you're not right here. I'm not the my whatever you want to call me at this point. We are talking friendly, right? I'm here just to tell you, look, where the hard stuff is worked on, we generally speaking deal with it like this, and I explained to you. I'm not doing what I would do normally in front of a class now. So it's important because, of course, this makes the content kind of more accessible, kind of even simpler to understand. That's what surprises me, that you can't be bored by listening to me talking for a long time, that I give it to you. But I'm not just talking about nothing all along the way. And still that it's not much about even the information itself, but in the way it is explained, right? After all, what's the point here? We all have to make sense of the world. So, you can't make sense of the world if the world is not explained. You can't have a minimalistic attitude to scientific understanding. It doesn't mean anything, right? Because the world overwhelms you, and so if you don't struggle all the time trying to understand it, you can't cope with it, become dysfunctional for it. So I appreciate very much that Schwerpunkt managed to reach so far, in a way, in spite of the limitations itself of our cultural, context, to say the least. I mean, the fact that, in fact, people do not generally appreciate much of these approaches, but instead they should become, and they will become, prevalent once again, right? We are just out of the phase of the education of the masses that was just, had to be satisfactory, hadn't to be good, hadn't to be qualitative, had just to teach people to be kind of functional human beings for, becoming the new workers, not the new leaders. At this point, education will increase, hopefully, dramatically as a necessity to manage a world that is ever more complex. So it will be a next step forward. And so questions like, can you make a 15 minutes video where, I'm simply giving you essentially for free, advertisements aside, that you can skip, 2 hours of content from somebody that, after all, got a doctoral degree in the same topic. I don't think it's a very convenient strategy, right? Also, so I like to expose these attitudes because we should feel also, we shouldn't just, pat each other's shoulder and say, yeah, okay, let's do it, man, like as you want. No, there should be some harshness, there should be some discipline, some sense of hierarchy, of authority, of discipline, and it's difficult to have it if you have never been exposed, if you have been habituated to the idea that somebody has to feed you and you don't have to do anything else on your own, right? If you presume to listen to my content just in a passive sense, for you to don't not making an effort to get it's a serious problem, because you see, again, it could be boring to listen to me, but if you're listening to me in this sense, you don't find me excessively boring at that point, but still at that point you could profit from the fact that behind every video there is a more comprehensive view and interpretation that is the sap of historical interest. Like, I can tell you, among us, among or my colleagues and so on, what we are fascinated by about each other is how far we can, not how much we know just per se, that's not the point, but how we interpret history, because history is empirical in a sense. So if you're expert in a certain field and others aren't, of course those people are interested not in getting, let's say, what is an objective historical understanding. There is no such thing. First of all, because they wouldn't know how to recognize it, because they don't know what that field is really. You do, and so you're expected to have provided some insights and that are meaningful for people with a historical judgment, right? And so I'm personally battling among the various among the various things I'm battling against this presumption that history is based on facts, right? There is an absolute history, a true history, or something that you can say, okay, this is my standard, whichever it is, and if you don't alienate to that standard, it's because you're wrong, right? And because you have found the philosophical stone, let's say, and you think you have found the truth. There's no such. I mean, the truth does exist, as we've explained countless times, but you don't have it, right? And the best you can do is to keep searching ever and ever again. So stopping to a point actually declares the fact that you have already failed. And history is this. It's in fact the process of research in itself. But we have to reverse people's mind regarding to the main trend that is objectively the one of considering history as a sort of fixed standard, that apparently the more it is conceived like this, and the more it's actually wildly subjectivistic and opinable and completely flexible, because of course there can't be any historical knowledge with together with moral relativism. So if you think that the fact that continuous historical research means that history doesn't actually uncover something that is consistently real, at that point that is moral relativism, and it's a very serious problem, because it properly denounces, of course, the lack of understanding of why we study history. The fact that, of course, you have always to refine it, that there's not ever an ending point. But history is real, meaning that the things that you discover come from a real world. So you're not discovering an imaginary, abstract concept that you can twist as much as you would like to, to the end of times. Philosophically, not being able to test it in reality. History is real. So in a sense, of course, that you can acquire a much greater factual understanding the more you are able to realize that you can't stop to itself. It sounds paradoxical, almost oxymoric in a sense, but it's really not. And it's the difference that it makes, really, because it all gets down to positive applicability. It's the difference that experience makes over speculation, right? So digging into content and listening to me and to some perspective, re-uploading the videos now, there is not the chronological order anymore, but I presume nobody actually listens to it like that unless there is some serious. Like, yeah, the phone click is all well ordered, and I haven't re-uploaded it because it was copyright free completely. The images are just the phone Clausewitz's avatar, so there was no reason to do it. But let's say all the other content is, even from my perspective, you should actually listen to it randomly, right? You should find the videos that you have already, you can follow, of course, a chronological order as well. It's, every day, if you follow every day, as many of you do, and of course, you can grasp better also my own evolution in this regard. But generally speaking, especially from a strictly historical, from a, say, if you are interested in history and its basic content, let's say, you can't find so much at this point. I don't know how much we did about the migration era, or about the Holy Roman Empire, or about lots of other things. And relatively to the content here, do I plan to change anything with the new year or something? Well, as I was saying before, I abandoned the usual cycle that had established last year. I introduced something more. We're going to talk about essentially more Bronze Age warfare, about Chinese, let's say, medieval Chinese warfare too. There is more naval history. There are interesting ads, let's say. This summer we started a new series about medieval Italy, medieval Germany, which we are covering kind of a bit more in detail. We can naturally expand it also to other countries at some point. There is, I don't think we added, let me check a second, because I have it here, but let's say what I was saying is that we stopped doing that because I began to make mostly manualistic history videos again, without, just choosing them, without random extraction like I did with the cycle before instead. And so, yes, we introduced something. Yes, I can announce this. First of all, I'm introducing a new series to say about essentially about modern warfare, from the late Middle Ages to Napoleonic times. Because we already talked about this actually, but we're going to cover a bit more the 18th century finally, also the 17th, in a more concrete sense. But it's not like the list of troops or armies. It's more like a it's still, of course, it has very concrete references, but let's say it's going to be a bit more about the evolution of the art of war during that period. And also we're making videos now about a bit the general warfare of all the various Eurasian, Mediterranean, North African, in fact, regions, let's say, their warfare, basically, so that we can graft on that the more specific videos we will keep making, of course, about these topics. And yeah, that's pretty much it. These are the new changes, and I don't know when I will resume to that, because frankly, this had made the content a bit more dense and sometimes a bit more specific. So sometimes the videos were shorter, as you notice. Now with the manualistic ones brought to longer ones again. And I like those as well, because it's important to space to have. So when it becomes too technical, like, I don't know, we described, the middle, kingdom chariot during this century and this other, it starts becoming a bit, too technical. But I know people like it at some level, but let's say what I've been talking about recently, the Italian city-states during the 14th, 15th century, that's something a bit more, dense, really, and it gives you the possibility of spacing and controlling, connecting it to the other countries we've made before, so on. And so, I think that content is important. We will probably, maybe we can, I have some plans now. It's useless to tell you. You will see. And what can I tell you? I can assure it's not easy to do this all, but it does make sense. It's one of the few things that it doesn't matter how slow it processes, it goes on and so, but still it's working in a way or another, and so I managed to make it work, and so it takes just a little bit more of patience, and this thing will become big enough. And I think that we will be rewarded entirely, because I think what I'm doing here is objectively unusual, right? So somebody has already noticed this. I can't talk very much about this now, but chances are that the more we go on, and the more I can be projected further to do things that can promote this content further, and we can expand this kind of philosophy, culture, and understanding. I must tell you this. I'm also curious about you sometimes, because I realized that you are all different, and yet we are all here now to listen to such content, and I wonder if what's the reason for you. I mean, it's not that I want to know what you want to hear, because I maintain the upper hand on such things after all, but I mean, why you do it, because it's not obvious to me at all, right? I know I have an idea of what can interest you about what I do, right? I know in part of the interest is about me, which I rarely satisfy, because if not in videos like this, because I hardly ever talk about what happens to me. But I think that you also like kind of the narrative that I use, and I'm developing further. And of course, the more people come in, the more different they are, and sometimes there is, again, as I was saying before, there are people maybe do not understand really that what I do, because maybe they haven't listened to the whole thing. They haven't understood, they haven't listened maybe all my political considerations, my worldview. Why do this for? What's history about? What's war? Right? There is, again, mostly historical interest that draws the attention, and then, however, the broader philosophy that lays at the root of this is, I can tell you, I've never found it anywhere, right? It surprised me as well, because I realized that making these videos actually brought me an enormous amount of notions, allowed development of very important skills. Also, my not just I express myself better finally, but I also interpret things in a much quicker and easier and confident way than before. And this hasn't remained without consequences. As I was saying before, I built up something in the meanwhile, which does turn out to work. And I think that I will have to bring up at the next level. I don't know how and when. Probably not in my, let's say, academic work, because in that sense I remain a bit more surgical. Whenever I write articles, I do it things that are mostly a bit limited, of course, in time and space. And if you want to make a serious thing, you're kind of obliged at that point. But again, I was saying before, the interpretation that I have now, certain phenomena, thanks to the videos I made here, is something that helps me dramatically also in the articles. So people do not expect, in a way. And I'll tell you this too, that I'm starting having some interesting feed on this, because especially this darker times that I've lived this year, this has been probably one of the worst years I've ever lived in my life, maybe the worst, which makes you realize that I had actually an easy time. But I got much darker. There are certain things that I'm starting to tell, and that you will listen to very soon, that probably will put us not in trouble. All this re-upload serves exactly the purpose of finally being confident that whatever happens, Schwerpunkt will not be taken down in any way. It was not a risk before either. I've used those copyright stuff for years. Nobody claimed those images even once after 500,000 views, but it would happen later on, so I had to do it. But so even relatively to the contents, that I can be pretty extreme in certain statements, but I always try to make it intelligible, and I kind of maintain a balance. I guess that you also appreciate the fact that I try to be objective even when I'm obviously biased. But there are certain ideas that will not be easy to spread, or at least will find some sort of barrier, some sort of let's say reaction, resistance, right? I actually see these ideas as being able to make the dam crumble, right? Because I think that we're a moment of tide turning. politically speaking. And I think that we can't take back what's always been ours. It should have remained ours for a long time up to now, and it was taken away. So with Schwerpunkt, I think that we will go toward that direction very potently. I'm frustrated. You hear it. I told you my story today. I'm in pain, right? Right now, I'm sleep deprived. My eyes hurt because of anxiety. This has nothing to do with the videos or anything. After all, I manage my schedule pretty well. But let's say I'm aching psychophysically, and this thing I managed to channel in here now, right? And I'm starting to make the big steps that will tell me, I don't care about myself now. I care about myself, the self I can be, right? So we will have to struggle, because you are called to, if you care about this channel, of course, to support as much as you deem it to be necessary. But you will be. This is the point. Without you, this thing doesn't quite exist. Without you, I would just be literally alone here, talking about something nobody would hear. I would do it even if just one person were listening to it, probably even if nobody did it at some point. But I know now that I see the numbers growing, and I see people gathering. And what is scary, in a sense, is that for a person like me, who was very reserved personally, very careful about his privacy, making all these videos out there, saying all these things, means a lot. And it's kind of unpredictable, right? When you make 1,200 videos at this point, and you start having thousands of subscribers that are increasing and so on, you realize that this stuff will start bouncing here and there, will start expanding. People will start to root for this thing, and in ways that you have to be quite careful in the way you manage, because again, what you say is important. What you say does have an impact. That's why I'm so frustrated. Before, I was frustrated too about the misunderstanding of the content, because this content cannot be misunderstood. I hate to be harsh in this sense, but it's like when you go to a professor and you say, you point out something that according to you he didn't say, or doesn't make sense to you, and you try to criticize. But in order to do that, your real moral, a decent behavior, let's say a perfect ideal even behavior, would be the one of having literally read and studied actually all the things that person has said before, in order to even think to dare something, to dare to say something about that. And the same goes with my content. I don't care if you came here for the first time, you listen to something that is strange to you and that we have explained countless times and expanded on, and you have to make your, you have to say your own thing, and because it's not going to really work. You should make the effort of going back and listening at least all the pertinent videos to the issue that you presume you can't interact with me for, and then just then, if you still have something else to learn, say, maybe make it. And this is important because it's a matter of effectiveness. Like when I start now assistantship and I start making lessons to crowds of people and so on, the worst thing will be to keep them at bay, right? Because at the first year of university, you have always these kids that want to know what to show off, to know. I know because we all pass through that. To show off and say, I know this, I know that, right? Because you want to be validated, because at that time you feel the need to emerge and all this stuff, but that's not great. You should be disciplined first, and then having such ambitions, right? And since we don't teach discipline anymore, it's difficult even on a YouTube channel to not, censoring something or not allowing, because I know it's dark, yes, but it's fair. It's that margin of discretion that is given to who is in charge, which in this case it's me, and that I owe you as a responsibility. because you can't do it for me. So it's important. I like to see it as a positive thing, right? It can sound dark because, again, we're not habituated to hierarchy, to discipline, to order, and all this stuff, but it doesn't mean anything, right? It should be like that. And in any case, this is an important topic we discussed today, and I'm glad for it. So what can I tell you at this point? Again, it was hard, and I'm not sure how much Shroud Punk really helped me through this. There are certain moments in the day I hate physically, and when I make these videos, it's as if I unplugged the connection to that, and I just were suspensed in a moment where I can speak and forget what makes me hate, and then I come back to reality. So when I'm about to finish the video, like right now, probably will take another while. Anyway, I start feeling, oh no, I have to go back in that world. I can tell you, it's like when I sleep that all the rationale, self-control goes off, and so emotions expand, even in dreams, in nightmares, and I can tell what I dream. It's painful, and every time I wake up, I reacquire conscience. I rationalize, I acknowledge that of the pain that I suffered during the sleep, and I have a terrible heartbeat acceleration. It's terrifying, right? It's terrifying to come back to reality, right? It's that kind of feeling, and probably this is relatable to some of you if you have ever experienced similar issues. But this thing that I do here is like really something that gives me a support, right? Not you giving support to me, I mean properly doing the video, doing the thing, and knowing that it's gone there and that it has left a mark, it has produced something. It's important to me. And so I know that there are people who are going through much worse, horrible, terrifying tragedies, disgraces, and so on than I do. I have it dramatically easy, so that's why this thing scared me so much, because I talk about war, of unspeakable sufferance, violence, enormous moral and strength, and all into stuff, and such a thing that happened to me was able to break me at this point. I can tell you, it doesn't never happen easily, right? Because I'd never fallen easily, and yet that's what happened. So this is another lesson learned, but it takes time to heal, and Schwerpunkt does help me a lot with this. And I hope that you can see that in the content I make, there is each and every element of what I live through. That there is nothing that I don't use in order to explain history. Explaining, right? It's like having a map of it, right? And it's a challenge every time, because there is no standard way of explaining history. You have to create it on your own, and so you have naturally to draw from your experience like this. So to any of you independently from this, but especially, and we all have it by some degree, as you understand, who have suffered, who have struggled, who sometimes think that I'm not gonna make it, or I fear, I'm scared, I'm down, or there is something that doesn't work, I don't know how to fix it. Remember that it all starts from you, that nobody can take that away from you. You have a power in yourself that nobody can take away from you. And even if there is some above that makes it happen, it's still up to you to make it happen. That can give you some empowerment. It's important, because when you start to be useful for a change, that is for yourself, and when that happens, you can be useful for all the others around you. And that's where miracles happen, because when people are better, they can help each other. There is no way to help others by an intermediate agent, right? You are the one who can make it happen. So also things like love, like friendship, like all the beautiful things that exist in the world, right? They do exist. We are the ones who have to make it happen. Nothing is meant to be. Reasoning like that is fatalistic. It's Dionysian, right? Things do happen, yes, in a way that we cannot control. We're not stronger than anything. But in theory, it's as if we had to strive for being so. That's the only direction. And you would be surprised by how much you can achieve when you enter that mindset. And then it can be painful to break down. But again, if there is nobody who does this, everybody would be constantly broken. And this is what, in so many totalitarian regimes, from fascism to communism, this had been brought to the abomination of mankind. That is the denial of reality, right? That's the first thing. It's convincing people that what was happening was not really happening. That there was somebody else that would solve the matter for you. You just have to smile and be happy and believe in it. Because if you don't, you are not from the good sheep, victim side that is so pure and saint, and while outside there are just snakes that want to predate on you, right? That's the idea. You have to learn also to make evil to be able to do good, and because otherwise there could be no lesson learned in the process, right? Not that you should strive for that. Of course, you should strive always to do something positive, to do something that works, right? And that's what brings you to the realization, of course, that whatever you do is somewhat rigged by some default fault, in fact, that is ineliminable from human condition. But that the only way to fix that, at least in part, and so to make actually a big difference still by human standards, is to improve yourself, is to take action. And I know sometimes it feels as if, it's over. It's game over. It's end game. Like, it's hardly ever over. There is hardly ever an end. Even when we approach the end. Because there is something in suffering that reveals the true quality of a person. That truly reveals an heroic dimension. That is able to say, doesn't matter how this ends, I still will have fought till the end. And it's risky. It can be your damnation in a way. But nobody's beyond redemption in that dynamic either. And we're a mix of both, of good and evil. And there is no way to fix that. There are not just good people. And there is not just evil people, no matter who they are, right? Which has nothing to do with the moral relativism of thus, we really can't know. No, that's the trick they played on you. What you have to realize, like in history, is that the fact that everything appears to be relative actually brings you to the realization that it's not relative at all. That reality is relative to you, but it's something outside of you that exists because of other reasons that you can start to sort out. At least in the way they work. And in which you can relate yourself to, but still, if reality is not like that, there's no way you can make relativism to make it work the way you would like to. And many people instead do this, and they do it especially. You see, history here is a great medicine because it teaches you to observe that at a broader political, military, and social level that most people, even when they claim to be interested in history or to have this passion or whatever, that they don't really do, because they don't really work on it, they don't really struggle, they don't really make the actual work. And everybody knows that when you actually do it, realities start taking a shape through which you can't see, so you can't start to grasp some glimpse of truth, right? That, again, you will never fully grasp, but it's still, informing reality in a way that does make sense. And at the point you sometimes it's seducing also not to have to feel the need even to explain it to others, but to put the others in the same condition you were when you found out that thing, which honestly is what I'm trying to do here. Because if I told you the things I find out just by themselves, yeah, I can provide with a cogent explanation of it in a sense, but still the explanation has to take into account the fact that certain stages may not be owned by everybody, and so that in the absence of them, you have to provide for a further, more adequate explanation that comprehends that phenomenon. It's not easy. That's why we are always challenged in everything, because that eventually reflects in the way we live, in the things we do. And so never stop feeling in challenge. I'm suffering so much right now because I challenge myself, because I'm not able to say it doesn't matter, you see, and I strive, but I survive because of that. Because if I let myself go and if I said, yeah, okay, who cares? I will just forget, because without making sense of it, the thing would always haunt you back. The thing would always be, instead there is always an explanation, and it can be more or less accurate. You can always improve it, but you must find that. So forgetting is good as long as you have settled the issue, right? And not, just because trying to squish away from the problem, as many people really do. And that's an illness that is too widespread. It's probably the greatest illness we've gone through as a world, right? And it's becoming ever more difficult to manage in our times, because most of the problems we had to fix, we haven't settled, and we have provided an explanation for, and that's why history is so important, because this is explaining to people sometimes something that they don't want to hear. They have deliberately avoided to do, either because they were taught properly to deny reality, because they felt they realized if they had faced reality, they would have they feared because they feared they would have not been strong enough to face it. Instead, we are strong enough to face it. So don't believe this my few cents say on this. Don't believe to people who just say, yeah, it's never your fault, right? You shouldn't, these things just happen. It's all relative. Doesn't matter. Everything matters. And if you give up the possibility of making sense of it, doesn't matter how painful it is, you will go nowhere with it. On the contrary, that will block you, will paralyze you, will cripple you forever, and it can't be tolerable. And yeah, but we will see how far this has gone. How this is not just a sociological issue, this is a strictly historical one, because there are certain specific things that happened that in fact explain this. Of course, they are big topics. We cannot provide an explanation that literally comprehends everything, but not even just a monofactual one, a factorial one that fixates on just one issue and not on others. But there must be an understanding of certain stages, certain points, certain dimensions that we have not been told about, and instead we also live in, right? And we came out of, right? Even historically, or however they even if not in our lifetime, were, I don't know, they were about our parents, were about our grandparents, even before them. But yeah, we will see this thing. So, as I was saying at the beginning, I wish you some splendid holidays. I hope really this is a time to take it easy. I know that we still work during the holidays. People go out and stuff. At this point it's cold. I like cold, but of course as mostly was a stay home for that. Man, I don't like extreme weather in general. All right, like kind of temporary thing. But and there is it's hard, right? So it's not just a moment where you can relax and whatever. It's sometimes it's stressful, etc. But it's at the same time, I wish you for this time for you to take your time to relax, to slow down a bit, right? This the what the holidays, the sacred nature of them, the magic of them is meant to be, is to suspend yourself in a time that is timeless, right? And dimension is timeless, that makes you evaluate something that never changes, that is human, that is universal, that we must all recover in a sense. And when you think about that, when you talk to yourself, when you explain what the issues are, what you say what you want, and when you can picture your reality in a way that makes sense, that is not about lying to yourself or pretending things in fact are not the way they are, so you can really come out of this in a renewed way, in a way which you're a better person. And we all change in this path, right? But this moment of the year is very important for everybody to reflect on. Even on the harshest of things and the things that make you worried, make you suffer, but as long as you have yourself, and I hope you spend your time with the people you love, that's the most important thing. But even with them, always reflect on the fact that you are there for them, right? As much as they are there for you, and so it's all worth on the basis of what you do for, and that's a way to start improving, step by step, gradually but consistently. And so I'm sure that this time will bring you this capacity, in a degree or another, to reflect on it. And so I wish you a happy Christmas, especially, and also, broader for whoever listens. I don't have any, I'm relatively a traditional European, so that's the least I can do. I wish you, of course, also a happy New Year. I will be making videos before that, so I will tell you directly. But I care much for the holidays themselves, and I hope that you'll spend them really lovingly, peacefully, and with the best coming to you. So again, happy holidays and have a great time.